So, I mentioned in my last video, Butch Hartman and Values in Art, that I'm becoming more and more of a proponent of bucking traditional art rules, as well as disregarding the entire concept of improving at art in general in favor of creating art that brings you joy. This is a topic that's been on my mind for a while, maybe half a year at least, and today I wanted to talk about that. Let's start with a little story. Beginning in late 2021 and extending until about mid-2023, I was stuck in the absolute worst, most soul-crushing art block of my life. At the same time, I was also becoming a tattoo artist. Notably, being a tattoo artist requires that you create art, which felt literally almost impossible. It was suffocating, like there was something fundamentally wrong with me. Like a part of me, which used to be as effortless as breathing or blinking my eyes, had ceased to function altogether. Regardless, I got my tattoo license and got into a shop. But I only stayed there for 4 months before burnout caught up to me and I crashed and burned entirely. After I left the shop in February 2023, I tried to go back to the artistic basics, where before I was sprinting, this was like relearning to crawl. Every single thing I drew looked wrong. It looked bad, not nearly up to my standards, not anything like the art I'd been creating before the art block. It was torturous, demoralizing, and humiliating. I could no longer trust the instincts I'd honed over 20 plus years, could no longer trust my sense of observation or my ability to recreate what I saw. Every time I picked up my tablet pen, it was like scraping my insides with a spoon, trying to pick up whatever tiny dregs of dried up, crusty shit I could manage to puke up onto my canvas. At some point in late summer, I downloaded Game Maker and began making pixel art, and I legitimately credit this as the biggest reason I'm now coming out of the worst art block in my entire life after nearly 2 years. Because my pixel art is mid as hell. So here's the thing. Getting into pixel art meant I had not even the faintest idea of what I was doing. I perused a couple YouTube channels and read a couple blog posts, but ultimately, left to my own devices, I was throwing proverbial paint at proverbial walls and seeing what happened. Pixel art is so vastly different from the art I usually do that I could hardly even conceptualize whether it looked good or bad. I just knew that for the first time in a very, very long time, art was fun again. From there, going back to sketching, I gave myself over to one guiding principle. Let my art be shitty. An oft-repeated adage in the online art world is that art block happens when your ability to evaluate your own art outpaces your artistic skills. And while I think that there's definitely merit to this idea, I think it's more complicated than that. Well, part of my problem was certainly that I could, apparently, suddenly, perceive flaws in my art that I wasn't able to before. Another part of my problem was the ridiculously high and rigid standards I'd set up in my head. Why did the art I was making in 2015 look so much better than my art now, some 7 years later? I'm an artist, damn it, and I'm supposed to improve with time, not get worse. But, there's the clincher. Why is it such a bad thing to get worse? I was so incredibly terrified and ashamed of my art being worse than it used to be, or at least that's how I perceived it, subjectivity is a thing that exists, that it made creating art absolute torture. When I got into pixel art, I unexpectedly found that I was so much gentler on myself because I'd never done pixel art before. It's okay if it looks bad. I'm a beginner after all. But it's okay if it looks bad, period. End of story. Experience does not factor into this. It's okay for art to be bad. It's value neutral. It does not say anything about you or me as an artist or a person. It's not shameful or morally wrong or burdensome or something to fuss about. It is literally just art that exists. The other day, a reel came up on my Instagram that caught my attention. It was of an artist comparing their older, more painterly rendered art to their newer, simpler art. The point that they were making was that they had been using rendering to disguise their bad anatomy, and now that they were better at anatomy, they had more confidence to use a simpler art style. But what caught my attention was a comment on the reel from someone who made the case that it's not necessary to learn anatomy in order to use certain art styles, and that no one should feel obligated to learn anatomy if they don't want to. The replies were, less than charitable. A point that came up several times in the replies, and one that comes up a lot in online art circles, and even one that I've peddled myself, was you have to learn the rules before you can break them. And yeah, sure, that's true, if that's what your goal is. If you want to learn anatomy so you can stylize it in a way that still reflects life, then yeah, you'll want to do some life drawing and studying before you go about stylizing your proportions. But you don't have to. No one's holding a gun to your head and forcing you to learn anatomy. You want to draw anime boys kissing, but you don't want to go through years of studying anatomy and doing hundreds upon hundreds of life drawings first? You go right ahead. Do it. Who cares? Not every artist's intention with art is to improve in every capacity, or even at all. And that's literally fine. That's okay. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You can create art and you don't have to want to improve. You can create art because you want to. Being quote-unquote good at it is not a requirement and never will be. You absolutely do not have to learn any art rules in order to be allowed to break them. How and why you make art is entirely your business. Do not let anyone ever tell you that there is a prerequisite. Even the very concept of improving is subjective. Improving at anatomy may not mean getting truer to life for every artist. Improving at anatomy may mean becoming more consistent, or creating more striking silhouettes, or pushing proportions to their limits. Improvement is a meaningless term that we have co-opted to mean truer to life in all contexts, when that is simply not the case. A cubist's idea of improvement is going to be different from an impressionist's idea of improvement, is going to be different from a surrealist's idea of improvement. And even still, like I said, it's okay to not want to improve in any sense of the word. It is okay to make art simply because you want to, with no concern towards any sort of art rules or improvement. But I don't want to make bad art! Why? Why is making bad art so scary? What's so wrong about it? Literally, who cares? In the grand scheme of things, is making a bad drawing that consequential? It says nothing about you as a person. It says nothing about you as an artist. It is simply art that exists. I think the online art world has become so poisoned that it's caused us all to develop this particular brain rot where we should always, always, always be looking to improve, and improving in one specific way, mind you. And if we don't, we are failing at being artists. We must always be striving to become more marketable, more striking, more attention-grabbing, to hold ourselves to higher standards, to stand out from the crowd in the unforgiving climate of social media algorithms and capitalism. We are not allowed to have wonky anatomy or ugly colors or any other sorts of flaws, because if we do, that means we are bad artists. If we stop striving to improve, we are bad artists. If our skills regress, we are bad artists. Do you see how pernicious that is? Do you see how that kills creativity and drive? Do you see how that fuels art block? Constantly harping on artists to improve benefits nobody. It is capitalism-induced brainworms born from a society that only values productivity and which unrelentingly smothers anything superfluous. If you want to be an artist, you must be a good artist, even if you're doing it as a hobby with no intention to make money, even if you are only doing it for yourself. If you make bad art and you have the gall to be proud of that, who gave you that right? Who said you were allowed to create art just for the joy of creation? Don't you know you're only allowed to make and share your art if it fits into one specific box? The thing that really kickstarted my wanting to make this video was seeing this Tumblr post by apple-flavored Kit Kats. It was the first time that I really saw this idea articulated, and I'd like to read it to you. Part 1. Top 10 ways to improve your art. Tips for small artists to get more reach. How to improve this person's art. Here are some industry standard art programs to use. What if all of you just died? Part 2. We are facing an art crisis like no other. Capitalism wants artists to fucking hate themselves so they can make more profitable art. There's nothing wrong with wanting to become better at something, but industry has started bleeding into fandom and hobby spaces and no one is calling this shit out. And now we're seeing millions of artists hate themselves because they're not doing realistic anatomy when they're like 12. Or it's not even young people. It's about how artists at a mass scale feel demotivated to draw because they want to be better. It's capitalism, guys, and any of you feeding into the idea that all artists should strive to improve is stupid. I really do think that art crisis is a good way to put this phenomenon too. I've seen so many artists online whose relationship with their art and art as a concept in general has become deeply unhealthy because creating art is no longer joyful for them. Even if they are only creating art as a hobby, they have let themselves fall into the claws of this capitalistic mindset. Creating has become such a painful slog, which causes them constant insecurity and doubt and fear, because they're being held to such impossibly high standards that whenever they stagnate, or whenever their skills aren't actively improving, or whenever they create something that does not meet their expectations, which again are impossibly high, so this happens constantly, it feeds into that mindset that they are a bad artist. And being a bad artist is a sin of the direst consequence. My art block lasted almost 2 whole years. I went through a literal identity crisis. The idea of being me without being an artist felt empty. But creating art felt empty too. It felt worse than empty. It felt like I was actively contributing to my own misery. I could not understand why something which used to be so life-giving, which I used to stay up all night doing just because it was so enjoyable, was now almost unbearably, agonizingly hard. After all, I used to be so good. I'd be good again. It's just, my ability to see how bad I was more developed than my ability to draw well. If I just kept working, I'd improve, and then I'd be good again. But my art block didn't go away because of that mindset. My art block only started to go away when I let myself be okay with creating bad art. I encourage you to deconstruct your ideas about art and improvement and the whole concept of good versus bad art in general. Do you perpetuate these beliefs and behaviors with regards to yourself? To others? Why? What benefit does it have? What tangible good does it do? How could you go about shifting your mindset to creating art for its own sake? For the joy found in the act of creating something, regardless of its quality? How could you go about becoming less critical of yourself and others? How could you go about dismantling the fears and doubts you have about what you make? Creating bad art means nothing. Not wanting to improve means nothing. Neither of these things will destroy society or tick some spooky, scary box in your metaphysical permanent record, marking you as an imposter or a sinner or, worst of all, a bad artist. Neither of these things have any consequence. We need to inspect our obsession with good art and improvement and unreachably high standards and marketability and flawless facades. Fuck the idea that you have to learn the rules before you can break them. Break the rules with impunity. We need to break them. We need more bad art. Thank you for watching. I don't really read the comments on my videos in general, but I'd be really interested to hear other people's opinions about this topic. I've seen it discussed more and more just in the past couple of months, really, and I think it's really heartening, because I genuinely do believe that we've cultivated such toxic beliefs about art in the past couple of years. Although I think that that's sort of inevitable in the midst of how capitalism and social media algorithms dictate our day-to-day lives as artists. Bad art is almost not even really allowed to exist anymore. If you want to share your art and get noticed, you must fit into a rigidly defined idea of good art, and you must either know how to manipulate the algorithm or get lucky. Or you must be so bad that you garner controversy, I guess, but that brings its own risks with it, like dogpiling or relentless trolling, or even worse, depending on how bad the internet decides your art is. Making bad art is discouraged both implicitly and explicitly. And if you have no interest in improving, oh, that's even worse. The nerve! So yeah, definitely leave your thoughts in the comments if you'd like. I'd like to see them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.